Aside from applying sound in the interface, we can also use touch. It is also known as the haptic interaction. On our previous lectures, we have discussed about the haptic channel of a human being, which enables us to perceive objects using our sense of touch. It is divided into two areas. The first area is the cutaneous perception, which is concerned with the tactile sensations through skin caused by vibrations. The second area is kinesthetics, which is the perception of movement and position through resistance or force feedback. Haptics can facilitate perception of properties such as the shape, texture, resistance, and the temperature, as well as comparative spatial properties such as the size, height, and the position of an object. So this means that it can provide information on the character of objects in the interface. An example of tactile device is the electronic braille technology, which helps the visually impaired persons to use the computer, like what is shown on the image, like what is shown on this presentation. Electronic braille displays benefit users from two factors: a well-established tactile notation using the braille technology, and a user group with expertise in using this type of notation. So, alam naman natin na pwedeng makapag-interact using this type of technology wherein ginagamit niya yung sense of touch niya in lieu of the sense of sight. Since they are visually impaired, ang pinaka-main channel na ginagamit nila to interact with the different objects is yung sense of touch. Other main type of haptic device is the phantom from Sensible Technologies. So it is a force feedback device which provides kinesthetic information back to the user, allowing him or her to feel resistance, textures, friction, and so on. Next is handwriting recognition. Like speech, we consider handwriting to be a very natural form of communication. And there are mechanisms to capture handwritten information. So the major piece of technology used to capture handwriting is the digitizing tablet, or kagaya ng nasa presentation natin. Digitizing tablet have free-flowing strokes made with a pen, which transform it into a series of coordinates approximately 1 every 1/5 of the second, or at the sampling rate of the digitizer. So the variation between the handwriting of individuals is very large. Moreover, the handwriting of a single person varies from day to day and evolves over the years, which is related to the problem in speech recognition. So, yung handwriting natin, guys, is alam naman natin na pabago-bago yan. Minsan, depende pa nga sa mood natin. Let's say, kung pagod tayo, may tendency na magiging pangit yung handwriting natin, pero kung nasa good mood tayo, pwedeng mag-result yan into a good handwriting. And also take note that every individual have their own handwriting styles. So the problems in recognizing handwriting is that the equivalent of co-articulation is prevalent in handwriting since different letters are written differently according to the preceding and successive ones. This causes problems for recognition systems which work by trying to identify the lines that contain text and then to segment the digitized image into separate characters. Aside from handwriting recognition, we also have gesture recognition. So in gesture recognition, we control the computer with certain movement of hand which would be advantageous in many situations where there is no possibility of typing or when other senses are fully occupied. It could also support communication for people who have hearing loss if signing could be translated into speech or vice versa. Example ng gesture recognition guys sa smartphones natin gumagamit. Meron ng application na ganyan na kapag gumamit tayo ng camera and then if we just wave our hand on the camera, automatic na ika-capture niya yung image. But unlike speech, gesture is user-dependent object to variation and co-articulation. So this is an example of a technology which uses gesture recognition. The data glove. It provides easier access to highly accurate information, but it is a relatively intrusive technology which requires the user to wear a special lycra glove like what is shown on this image. So those are the different ways to support the universal design on our interaction. So mainly, it will help those who are having some issues on their different senses. Users have needs and capabilities when it comes on designing for diversity. We have to take note that interfaces are usually designed to cater for the average user, but unfortunately, this may exclude people who are not average. People are diverse and there are many factors that must be taken into account in scheming universal design. So like what I have said a while ago, those ways of supporting universal design will help especially those persons who have problems with their other senses or those persons who are differently able. It is estimated that at least 10% of the population of every country has a disability that will affect interaction with computers. Employers and manufacturers of computing equipment have not only a moral responsibility to provide accessible products, but often also a legal responsibility. So in many countries, legislation now demands that the workplace must be designed to accessible or at least adaptable to all. Para kahit differently abled yung empleyado nila, at least that employee can work like a normal employee. That is why That is why in many countries, legislation now demands that the workplace must be designed to be accessible or at least adaptable to all, to aid the needs of especially to aid the needs of those people who are differently abled. Now let us consider these different disabilities and the different design which can support or which can help them to use computer systems. The first disability is visual impairment. The sensory impairment that has attracted the most attention from researchers because it is potentially one of the most debilitating as far as interaction is concerned is itong si visual impairment. So in order to help visually impaired users, there are two key approaches that can be used: the use of sound and the use of touch. Examples are the screen readers using the Braille technology and the soundtrack, which is a word processor with an auditory interface designed for users who are blind or partially sighted. So instead of using their hands to input data on a word processor, so sa part in a word processor, so merong application or merong technology na soundtrack which uses auditory interface. Hearing impairment. So compared with the visual disability, where the impact on interacting with a graphical interface is immediately obvious, a hearing impairment may appear to have a little impact on the use of interface. So to help the users with hearing impairment, we can use text communication like email and instant messaging. We can also use the gesture recognition and then the textual captions. Another one is the physical impairment. Users with physical disabilities vary in the amount of control and movement that they have over their hands, but many find the precision required in the mouse control difficult because they are physically impaired. So mahirap gumamit ng mouse. So we can provide them speech and output. Also, the eye gaze system, which tracks eye movements to control the cursor or a keyboard driver that can be attached to the user's head. We can also use gesture. And an alternative is the predictive system, which is a reactive keyboard which anticipates the commands that are being typed and offering them for execution. So for users with speech and hearing impairments, multimedia systems provide a number of tools for communication. These are synthetic speech, text-based communication, and conferencing systems. Another disability is dyslexia. These are users with cognitive disability, which can find textual information difficult. So we can help them by providing them consistent navigation structure and clear signposting cues. Color coding of information will also help them to interact with the system, and provision of graphical information to support the text on the interface. Another disability is autism. Autism affects a person's ability to communicate and interact all around them and to make sense of their environment. So computer-mediated communication and virtual environments have been suggested as possible ways of enabling people with autism to communicate more easily with their environment. Now, let us consider the different age groups when designing. So, other areas of diversity that impact upon the way we design interfaces is the age of our users. In particular, older and children have specific needs when it comes to interactive technology. Older people can use mobile technology to provide them memory aids in order for them to recall. We can also use disability aids and communication tools to provide them or to prevent them from social isolation. But dito sa part ng mobile technologies, other older people are afraid to learn something new. Dito yung part kung saan medyo matatakot pa sila or they are hesitant to use a mobile technology. But there can still be other medium in order for them to interact with the computer system. And we have the children. So like older people, children have distinct needs when it comes to technology. Simply, we can provide them by giving them the appropriate input or output devices. Kasi sa age groups, for example, yung toddler, si toddler hindi pa niya kayang i-determine or hindi pa niya kayang magbasa. Kaya huwag mo muna siyang bibigyan ng isang mobile device or computer na punong-puno ng text commands. Unlike yung age group na teenagers. So, yun yung mga kailangan natin consider when we look or when we design for the different age groups. And the final diversity that we will consider is itong si cultural differences. So, when we design for cultural differences, we have to take note on the influence of nationality, generation, gender, race, class, religion, political influence, and others on the interpretation of the interface features, which includes the interpretation and acceptability of language and cultural symbols. We have also cultural symbols, gesture, and color. So, take note that in every country, magkakaiba naman tayo ng culture. Pwedeng yung culture natin dito, hindi pala nila culture o kaya masama pala ang ibig sabihin sa ibang country. That is why we have to also consider cultural differences for or when we aim to design for universal design. Okay, so those are the different aspects that we have to take note or different diversity we have to take note when we aim for a universal design. So to sum up our topic, universal design is about designing systems that are accessible by all users in all circumstances, taking account of human diversity in disabilities, age, and also in culture. Multimodal systems provide to a range of different input and output channels, exploiting redundancy. And lastly, for any design choice, we should ask ourselves whether our decision is excluding someone or whether there are any potential confusions or misunderstandings on our or on our choice. So, that is the end of our discussion on this topic. Hopefully, you have understood all the concepts and all the different diversities when it comes on designing or when it comes on scheming for the universal design. So thank you for listening. Stay safe and God bless.